Hi, book lovers. Just going to do my weekly little catch up on where we are and talk about the reading rush since I'm insane enough to try that one too. Brutal truth, though, is the reading rush is going to let me also hit a lot of the books I have left yet to read for um, the Bookie Trials. So it's all going to work out beautifully because I'm not really adding anything to my books. I'm just doubling up on the reading challenges that they fit. The first book I got finished this week, I'm in love with the series. Now I have to go finish the whole thing. What was frustrating is I didn't pay attention. It's right on the cover. Didn't pay attention that it says book one, The Five Musketeers. Book one is called At Sword's Point. Rose Davy, a modern day woman. It's a time travel story based on obviously the famous Alexander Dumas characters. Goes to France, kind of against her will, kind of begrudgingly. Her father is ill and has cancer, and they're not sure how much longer he'll live. And she has always wanted to take this trip, and her father kind of insists that she go. I don't want you to let my health keep you from taking this dream trip of yours. While she's kayaking, she gets bumped on the head and wakes up, not in her time. This is after the adventures of Dumas' famous novel. The Musketeers have somewhat settled down. They've stopped all of the gallivanting. The king has died. The queen has had to leave the city, and she's been restored, and her son is now 15 years old. She and the cardinal are acting as his regents since he's still very young, and maybe not quite ready to lead on his own. She can speak English, obviously. Does fairly well with French. Her father is from her father's family, her father's ancestry goes back to Gascony, which is why she's in that part of the world to begin with, is to try to trace some of her family's tree. And when the Musketeers, when D'Artagnan hears that she can speak English, he asks her to be a translator. This woman, Isabel, has come from England and wants to meet with the king to ask for his help in getting rid of Lord Protector Cromwell. The Knights of St. George have sent her to talk to the king, and they go have the conversation with the king. The king consults with his regents, calls them back to the palace, and says, yeah, we can do this, but we'll send just the Musketeers. And the Musketeers say, you know what? We're not sure we can trust a translator from England, so we need you to come with us. Rose really just wants to go back to Gascony and try to figure out how to get back to her own time. D'Artagnan promises to provide the funds to get her home. Now, he thinks home is the colonies. He thinks home is in New Amsterdam. She's letting him believe that because she technically does live in New York. Just New York City, modern 21st century America. But I'm reading this book, and I'm watching them go into England, and there's a traitor, and I'm not going to give away any more than that because there's a great little plot twist, and if plot twists catch me by surprise, it doesn't happen often. Let me just put it that way. But I'm going, this has not been solved yet. How can this be the end of the book? And then as I page through it, I'm like, no, it's really the end of the book. And then they start listing the sequels. And I was like, there's like 5 books in this series that I now have to finish, because the one little complication I will give away is when she meets the Knights of St. George, she and the head of the Knights of St. George, a man by the name of James, who is the bastard son of the late Duke of Buckingham, they fall in love. So she's fallen in love with a man not from her own time, and what is she going to do? We get to the end of book 1, they're heading into Scotland to try to get safe passage on a boat, well, through Ireland to get on a boat to go back to France. And that's where we leave it. Cromwell is still alive. He's still in charge of England. And then I realized there's 4 more books in this series, and I have to know how this ends. So, a little frustrated that I didn't realize I was getting myself into a series. But then I went and did the very same thing with the very next book. Five Musketeers satisfied the Elven Guard location for the Book Junkie Trials, and we were off then to Apothecary Towers, which I believe that's the one where you just randomly pick the book from your bookshelf or your TBR. I literally opened up my Kindle app and I went scroll, and I closed my eyes and put my finger down, and I landed on a book that I have absolutely become obsessed with, called The Pygmy Dragon. Can we talk about this artwork? Like, do you see the cover art I'm obsessed with? In an ebook. Mark Sagia wrote The Pygmy Dragon, and again, I didn't pay attention to the cover. Shapeshifter Dragons Legends Book 1. Pip is a pygmy, and she lives in her village. She's a warrior, being trained as a warrior, very young, just started her training. In her culture, she is given one name when she hits that first age mark, and then she trains, and then she gets her real name. So she's not reached that second naming yet. When the big people attack her village and she's taken captive. She's eventually sold to a zoo, along with an Ariel ape and her cub. Ariels are predators to pygmies, and they put them in the same enclosure, thinking they're from the same part of the world, the same environment. Are you kidding me? So the mother Ariel keeps stealing all the food and won't leave anything for Pip to eat. Um, but she got hurt when she was taken. She got hit on the head very badly, and goes into these moments of rage, almost like a human would with a close head injury, and eventually dies from her wounds. Her son Hunagu has taught Pip some ape so they can talk, and they've become friends, very, very good friends. He gets hurt um, in an incident and nearly dies, and she has a vision and can kind of see him sort of going into the light, and she blurts out this word that she didn't really know and didn't know what it would do. It's called a word of command, and he turns around and goes, "What have you done?" And she literally pulls his soul back from the brink into his body, not knowing that just by speaking that word, she released this really powerful magic into the universe that got the attention of all of these magical beings, dragons everywhere and things. This man shows up and looks into the enclosure, and he stares at her, and he starts communicating with her telepathically. And Pip is going, "What that?" Because he speaks Pygmy, which is a strange language for a human to speak. Meanwhile, she has a man coming who is teaching her human, his version of human. They're not truly humans like we know them. It's a whole fantasy world. And she's teaching him Pygmy. So they're learning to communicate. And really, this sort of becomes like a surrogate family for her, even though she's a Pygmy and they're big people. Eventually, this dragon shows up and busts its way into her enclosure, and she has no idea why. Until a little later on in the book, she figures out that the man who came and spoke with her telepathically is the dragon. He's a shapeshifter. She finds out she's a shapeshifter as well. She becomes an onyx dragon, which is extremely rare. Reds, greens, yellows, bronzes, common. Onyx dragons are really, really rare, and she is one. And she has more experiences with more words of power, words of command, words that she doesn't know, but that exact extremely powerful magic. So there's something about her that they're trying to figure out at this academy that she is taken to by this dragon. And again, I get to the end of the first book and go, okay, you've recruited one of the bad guys' marshals, one of his really powerful marshals, to work with you because he's fallen in love with Pip. But the bad guy is still out there, and then it dawns on me, this is another series. But it's really, really well done world building. Really well done. And they've just started to hint at the dragon lore and the legends of the dragons, the original Onyx dragon, who's sort of revered as the most powerful of all time. Pip has met some of the great dragons of yesteryear, who have sort of vanished from the rest of the world. They've sort of gone into hiding. And there's something very, very special that she's supposed to be doing. And we don't even really delve into that into the first book because she's struggling with her identity. And so then we get to the point where she's accepted who she is and what she is. And we've still got this whole big, like, battle for the safety of the world to fight, and it's insane. But I'm absolutely dedicated to finishing that series. Then I needed kind of a palate cleanser. These were two really intensely emotional books that didn't give me any real closure at the end. So I took off to Dwarf Mount, which you're supposed to read a book in. It's a touch of romance. I'm ready for the next book in the series, which is supposed to come out, I think, later this year or early next year. But I wanted to go back and revisit the most recent book just to kind of refresh my brain what that storyline was about. I'm a big fan of her stuff. She's a fun, easy, light read. Her main character in this particular series is one of my favorite female characters of all time, just because she's so real. She feels like somebody you could go out and get a drink with. Janet Ivanovich is Look Alive 25, the latest, one of the latest Stephanie Plum novels. Always a touch of romance in her books. Always a fun read. And like I said, I'd read it before, so I wasn't in any danger of needing to be like mentally prepared to deal with a really brand new complicated plot because I knew the storyline. I was just trying to refresh it in my brain because 26 comes out soon. The last book I got read for this week, I just finished it today actually. I was super excited about because I've arced for this author before for the first book in this series. I don't want to tell you a lot about this book because it doesn't even come out until September of this year. Like, this is literally a pre-publication. Please don't quote from this because it's not the final copy yet. Arc. I got to do the same thing with the first book in this series, which was phenomenal. The first book was called The Line Between. basically dealing with a disease that looked like dementia but killed quickly. Dementia came out early. It hit people of all ages. Winter Roth gets kicked out of this cult organization called New Earth. They call it the Enclave where they live. A family friend named Julie picks her up, lets her come live with her because she's a teenage girl who spent most of her life in this cult. She's never seen the internet, a smartphone. She doesn't news stories on the web. She doesn't know how to filter anything. She has no idea how to deal with, blown out of proportion news stories. Ends up having to go see a therapist and go on antidepressant meds and all kinds of things, anti-anxiety meds. Her sister comes to visit her, who was also in the cult. Her sister has a little girl named Truly, who Winter adores. And Julie's sick. Julie's got the disease, and Julie's going to die. Or not Julie, Jackie. Sorry, her sister's name is Jackie. Their friend's name is Julie. Jackie's going to die, but she hands her a cooler with tissue samples and tells her about a man who is in Colorado, a college professor, who can extract a vaccine from these tissue samples. The head of the cult is involved. He's trying to negotiate the sale of these tissue samples to the Russians for some seed that will prolong life. And so he wants to corner the market on prolonging life and let the Russians corner the market on this vaccine that will cure this or prevent this seemingly incurable disease. In the course of the first book, we find out that professor is actually Truly's real father. Jackie had a fling when she was away from the cult one night, and Truly was born. He does create enough for just a couple of vaccines. Winter, himself, and Truly are vaccinated against the disease. In the course of trying to get to Denver, she meets a guy named Chase, who's former Marine. They end up running into Magnus's first wife, who Winter had been led to believe was dead. She left the cult. So Magnus told everybody she died. And Castro puts them in touch with a man who has built an underground bunker to ride out the worst of this disease, thinking that when the people come out of the bunker, he thinks he's figured out about how long the gestation of the disease should last. And right now it's only affecting America. Canada and Mexico are getting ready to close their borders. She thinks she's handed the tissue samples over to Chase in the presence of American military. She finds out later that's not the case. Was Chase. They just weren't American military that were taking him, and he didn't know that either. So a single light starts when they've been locked into the bunker. I read this for On the Hallowed Isle, which is supposed to be an atmospheric or horror genre. Atmospheric genre, I had to dig into that a little bit. And basically what I get from that is it creates a mood. It does a lot of evoking the emotion that it's going for rather than trying to explain to you why you should feel that way. It's all told from Winter's perspective. And each chapter heading is whatever day number they've been in the bunker. So you're reading along at day 30, day 90, day 127. The bunker opens 2 days early, and nobody who was supposed to be up top is there. A light plane, a crop duster, has crashed into the solar panels and taken out the power. The barn's been burned down. The house has been ransacked. Everybody that was supposed to be there on the surface living in this locked down, firearms protected community is gone. And nobody knows why. There's been no communication left. Now we start counting down the hours. Literally it's 10 a.m., noon. Because Julie and her daughter Lauren have been in this bunker with Winter and Truly and Chase and some others. Communication stopped. The daily video feeds they were getting just stopped, and they didn't know why. And so this sort of stir crazy starts to settle in everybody. And Julie slips and falls in the kitchen. And when she lands, a knife gets her in the side, and they don't realize it, but it nicks her colon. And so she's injured, and she's infected, and she may die if she doesn't get the necessary IV antibiotics. There's no electricity. Cell phones don't work. Gas stations don't work. There are no vehicles with gas in them. So Winter and Chase take off. And she's found out some things about him that have really wrecked their relationship. So they've got to, maybe, if they decide to try to put things back together, they try to get to a big city and find that it's sort of mob law has taken over. Whoever's got the most power and can wield the most influence to scare the most people gets to run things. And she's literally racing against the clock. And they keep talking about this, about how many hours she has. And every chapter heading is a time, 10 p.m. And you're like, oh my God, she's got to get back and save you. So like literally I live on the edge of like panic and anxiety through this entire book, waiting for her to get back. And I'm not going to give you any more than that because, like I said, I haven't even written my review yet. It doesn't come out until September, but it is a phenomenal sequel to the first book. I loved the first book, and this one just literally like I sat it down, and my husband. We actually went to the golf course today. He loves to have me ride along in the golf cart, and I take a book because I don't golf. I have no athletic skill, so I sit and read, and I know all the right times to look up and go, "Good hit, honey," and go back to reading. I finished it sitting in the golf cart, and I kind of closed it and put it in a little cubby hole. And he goes, "Aren't you going to start another one?" I'm like, I need a minute. Just kidding. Let me kind of. I couldn't. It was one of those books that, like, I use the term book drunk. Like, I was so here, adrenaline wise, all the way through the book. And if that's not atmospheric, I don't know what is. But I didn't realize it until I put the book down and things had resolved. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, oh, I need to take a few deep breaths because my heart was racing. And that doesn't happen to me often. But this book really just dug me in. It's called Lighting in Yours Weird. A Single Light by Tosca Lee. A little bit post-apocalyptic. Like I said, doesn't even officially come out until September 2019. This is an arc. Literally, the front page of it, I used page past the cover. It's a "do not quote," big stamp across. Do not quote from this. Because there's probably one more edit to make sure that all the necessary tweaks have been caught. A couple of places they need to put graphics in where they had graphic will be inserted here in the book. But phenomenal read. If you like post-apocalyptic things, grab a line between to set yourself up and get that read before September, and then grab this in September 2019. So that took care of all the new books I'd read for this week. Now moving on to the ones I still need to finish, and the ones I will be reading for the reading rush. Like I said, the reading rush, I've set myself a goal of 7 for a week, which sounds insane and probably is, but at least 4 of them are on my Book Junkie Trials anyway. So that starts at midnight tonight for me, which as I'm recording this, it's about a little after 10. Of course, I still keep plowing away at my book for the giant squid. We're getting there. We're getting there. We are on page 895 out of 1156, I think. I blew through like 150 plus pages of this through a 24-hour readathon. Thank you, Your Majesty, from the Book Junkie Trials. And ironically, I did 150 pages yesterday with 2 performances at the community theater. I was in a production this weekend. We did 5 shows in 4 days. Yesterday was a 2-show day, and I still managed to get 150 pages read from an 11 o'clock yesterday morning to 11 o'clock this morning. So pretty proud of myself. But we'll keep plugging away at that one. I didn't include that in the reading rush just because I didn't think it was fair, because I won't read the whole thing during the week. I've already gotten through a big chunk of it otherwise. So what I'm reading for the reading rush, just got that TBR finalized and declared today. The first thing, now you don't have to get any of these. These are to get badges. You don't have to get any of the badges. You can declare any books you want. I figured, why not? Rather than just randomly picking books off of my TBR, let's see if I can make them fit the prompts and get the badges, because who doesn't like a gold sticker, right? Who doesn't like a gold star? Purple on the cover. I don't know how well this is going to show up color-wise. It looks very, very blue in your view, probably, but I promise you, the aura around the moon up here is very purple. It's called Blood Crescent by S.N. McCoy. I think I got this off either Hidden Gems or NetGalley. The purpose of it is to review. It comes out early August, I believe. So I need to get that read and reviewed anyway before it comes out. And it has purple on the cover, so I can fit it into the reading rush. This was not a part of the Reading Junkie Trials, so it doesn't help me there, but it'll help me get the review done on time. A book to read in the same reading spot. I have this really sweet recliner right there. Problem is, it's also a really good nap inducer, so I'm going to have to read in bite-sized chunks, because otherwise I'll nap the day away and not get any reading done. This one will also fulfill where's the prompt? Oh, no, wait, that's on the other page. For one of the prompts, you're supposed to read a favorite, Crimson Peaks. You're supposed to go back and read a favorite book. This is one I discovered in a box of books somebody had given to my sisters. My sisters are quite a bit younger than me. The closest one in age is 6.5 years younger. The baby is 9 years younger. And somebody had given them a box of books, because my whole family loves to read. My mom and dad both read. My middle sister and I are avid readers. The little sister, very different genre tastes, all of us, but we all read. And this book was sitting there, the original copy of this book, not this copy. The cover had fallen off. The binding was coming apart. And I was like, I was home visiting. I was married and in college by this time. I was home visiting and didn't have any reading material with me for some dumb reason. And I said, do either one of you? And they're like, yeah, no, we're not interested. And I read the synopsis and I went, okay, it's historical fiction. The main character is a woman named Kendra. She's finishing school. Her mother has remarried. Her father passed away. Her mother's remarried a man who was a military officer stationed in San Francisco. Now, at this point in time, San Francisco is just a military base. It's not a city. It doesn't exist. This is before the gold rush. And the story follows Kendra's life through the things she experiences, the gold rush, San Francisco fires, all of that. It's called Calico Palace by Gwen Bristow. It's been around for several years. I love this book. When I discovered it, I read it so often, probably about once a year till the book, like I said, it was already falling apart when I got it, and it fell apart the rest of the way from my reading it repeatedly. About 5 or 6 years ago, I don't even remember what it was, but something reminded me of this book. And I was reading another historical fiction that took place around the San Francisco fires, and I went, Calico Palace, I haven't thought about that book in forever. And I went looking on Amazon, and I picked up this really sweet hard copy. I mean, she's a little loved. Picked her up for like $7 on Amazon. So this is my favorite book to fulfill Crimson Peaks in the Book Junkie Trials. This is also on my TBR for the year for some year-long challenges. We've talked about the fact that I do those. Again, as a favorite book, the Medievalathon, I think, calls for a book that the pages are starting to yellow, and you can't see it here well, but they are. They're starting to get yellowed and aged. Excited to pick this one up. And again, the fact that it's a reread means that I don't have to necessarily work as hard to concentrate and pick up all the plot points because I know the story. It's just fun to find the new stuff I either didn't know was there or forgot was there when I reread. Meant to read in 2018. This is a book prompt in like 3 of the yearly challenges I'm doing too. And it is, I believe, also the same thing. I believe there's one of the prompts in the Bookie Trials that is the same way. Great Library. Yeah, something you meant to read last year. So I read the first book in the series a while ago, reread it like at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, because I knew I wanted to read the sequel, but I needed to get my brain wrapped around the story. Called The Deceiving by Niney Hammond. It's the second book in the Knowing trilogy. I actually have the whole trilogy on my iPad. This is actually part of the condensed trilogy. It's an all-in-one thing on my ebook or my e-reader. Excuse me. But I'm just reading The Deceiving for now, and then I'll come back and read the third book in the series. An author's first book. I've already talked about her once. I just raved about her new book that I arced. But I've not. There's a couple books by her I haven't read yet. I discovered her because she co-wrote a series with another author that I love, and I knew his writing well enough to know where his contributions were. And I knew if you know an author well enough and they collaborate with somebody, you kind of know what the other person collaborated. You can kind of hear their voice. And I liked what I saw. So I went and found her and read a bunch of her stuff. This is one I haven't read yet, and it's her debut novel. Obviously, it's several years old now, but this is her debut novel. It's called Demon by Tosca Lee, a memoir. The premise of it is, what would you do if a demon walked up to you on the street and wanted to tell you his story from his perspective? That's all I know about it, so we're just going to go with that for now. Non-human main characters. This is one I'm going back to reread because I want to read the series, and it's been like 2 or 3 years since I read the first book. So I'm going to go back and read this. Not the best cover art, but this is the one I could find. The Emperor's Harvest. It's the first book in a series called The Tales of Saladia. Really well done world building here. The 3 main characters have been prophesied of to take down an evil king. None of them are human. They are humanoid, a couple of them, but they're not human. So a non-human main character, I've got 3. I think I'm covered. This one also I am using for books about royalty, because there's an evil king in this book. So this is for the Queendom Stone as well. From there we go to 5 words or more in the title. I'm kind of fudging this. I'm not the only one that's done this. Warrior Mage Chains of Honor. This is book 1. It looks, if you look carefully, by Lindsay Buroker, it looks you almost get the hints of it, it's going to take place in China. That's what I thought too when I saw the robe and the sword. That might be the culture that influenced it, but it is a fantasy world. It's an entire fantasy story. It's not an existing world as we know it. Basically, the main character is trying to restore family honor. Shady doubts of possible treason have followed his family for a while. A family member is outright killed, murdered, and he's been given a chance to restore the family's honor, restore the family's rightful place in the kingdom, but of course somebody's going to try to stop him. So I'm intrigued by this one. It should be fun. And some of this one and Emperor's Harvest also cover reading prompts for the Medievalathon, which is going on right now as well. read, book, and watch the movie adaptation. This book has been on my year-long TBR. Doesn't fulfill anything on my Book Junkie Trials TBR, but it has been on my radar all year long. Beautiful Creatures by Cami Garcia and Margaret Stoll. It's like I said, it's been on my TBR all year long. I figured read the book and watch the movie. I can make that happen for this. So that's the seventh prompt in the reading rush. So that starts for me tonight at midnight, in about an hour and 45 minutes from when I'm recording this. It runs the 22nd through the 28th of July. Coming up in future months, there is the reading lottery-a-thon, and I'm kind of intrigued by this one. That one takes place in October, and you draw out prompts to build your reading TBR for the month. So they're going to release the prompts September-ish. So then you do your own lottery drawing basically to get it done. I'm also doing the Monster-a-thon, which is taking place in September. Working on getting that TBR put together, so I'm ready to go for then. So it's kind of exciting to see all of the reading I'm getting done. The really fun thing is when I look at my unread books list now on my Kindle app, I've got a lot that I've read. So the one nice thing about all these reading challenges I'm doing is I'm kind of cleaning out my bookshelves, so I don't feel quite so guilty about having all the titles I have on my Kindle app. I will put the information for the reading rush and the Monster-a-thon and the lottery and all of those things down in the comments of the video. Otherwise, have a great night and enjoy your reading.